The Committee of the Whole is back from recess. I hope everyone had a good weekend. We're ready to tackle this week. I'd like to thank Senator Chris Duenas, Senator Guåhan, Senator Fisher, who is here on time, ready to go, but unfortunately it does not meet a quorum. So we will recess until we can receive a quorum. Thank you.
Committee of the Whole is called back to order. Colleagues, we are on the amendment as amended. Okay? Everybody's on track? And this is on the UOG salary adjustment. I think Senator already motioned to me that he's not going to speak. So we'll just go ahead to the closing and an amendment. Yes, Senator Fisher.
Yeah, I haven't had an opportunity to speak on the amendment as amended.
Amendment as amended? You mean the amendment as amended?
Yeah, what I'm looking at is UOG faculty salary adjustment, notwithstanding the provisions of Section 4, the sum of dollars is hereby appropriated from the fiscal year rainy day fund to the University of Guam. Period. The University of Guam shall not raise tuition during the fiscal year.
Understood, but they passed out an amendment that's going to change that?
Right.
So, I don't know, do you want to speak about the rainy day fund even though there's going to be amended?
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, okay. Yeah, because, I'm entitled to an opportunity to speak on it as well.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. Now?
Yes, please.
Okay. The amendment as amended strikes out provision of funds for the faculty at the University of Guam, strikes that out altogether, and it says that the University of Guam shall not raise tuition during the fiscal year 2024. That's the one I'll be addressing. I can't support this because it serves to cripple the University of Guam. It cripples the university's ability to operate, and it also puts in a, yes sir, stop the clock please.
Yeah, yes, please, stop the clock. I just wanted to get clarification.
Go ahead.
You're speaking about the amendment as amended, right?
Yes, exactly.
That it doesn't prevent or jeopardize UG because it's telling UG we're giving you 3.6. You decide if you're going to go to salary or not.
Well, that would be an argument for you to make, but of course I'm speaking on it right now.
Okay.
So $3.6 million, which would have gone to the, you can start the clock again, which would have gone to the faculty, is now used at the discretion of the University of Guam for whatever thing they might want to do. I find that unfortunate because it does cripple the university. The university is the premier university in the region, and we must do everything we can to improve the faculty at the University of Guam. We must do everything we can to make their salaries competitive. And as you may know, sir, you probably know this already, our friends at Ernst & Young, the accountant firm, on August 21st of this year, released the Compliance and Internal Control Report for the University of Guam. Pardon me, I'm sure you're already aware of that. But this is what we need to understand, what we are doing by stripping the university of faculty of their money. They are a huge grant generator. The U.S. Department of Agriculture gave them $15 million last year. Commerce gave them $2 million. Department of Defense gave them $7 million. Department of the Interior gave them $2 million. I'm not going to read them all because it just goes on and on and on. National Science Foundation, $5 million. U.S. Small Business Administration, $1 million. The Department of Health and Human Services gave them $26 million. I'm not going to read them all, but you add it up, it comes to $66 million. If we are looking for return on investment, you can't find a better one than this. But no, we're going to, I just can't support the amended, as you've got it here, because of the fact that you're essentially stripping us of all of that federal largesse. And what we're really doing here is, because we didn't get our way at some point in the discussion on the University of Guam, we put in a poison pill that says the University of Guam shall not raise tuition during fiscal year 2024, which is a technique, I think, stripped out of an autocrat's playbook, but you don't get what you want, but by God, we're going to go for it anyway. Similar to a bill, similar to a movement from the same parties that attempted to shut down the executive branch. So, sir, I cannot support this, and thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Senator Fisher. Madam Vice, now for your closing. or anything else you want to speak on the amendment as amended?
Si Zeus Masi, Mr. Chair, and Manana si Zeus. Today's Monday, Lunes Pago. Then I'm going to start out new because I literally wanted to share with you, Mr. Chair, that I did have my priorities intact, and I know that as the previous speaker spoke about the importance of the university and it literally should be the educational gem of this side of the region. I think that a lot of us in this room will understand that even providing this source of revenue to the university will assist. And sometimes, Mr. Chair, in those efforts, we have to look at whether it be compromise, whether it be at least affording the opportunity that's presented in front of us, that we at least try. And in my efforts to secure that this 3.6 million get to the university, I want to proffer this additional amendment as amended, or I guess, would that be a substitution or a yes? I see the clerk saying it should be a substitution, so.
No, it'd be just an amendment to the amendment.
Amendment to the amendment, okay.
As amended.
Then instead of, as I originally stated, instead of taking it from the rainy day fund, that we take it from the audited excess general fund revenues. And that's where I had it in the way beginning. So it would be on page 114 to add a new section to the chapter 11, miscellaneous provision appropriations, onto the bill to read the university faculty salary adjustments, notwithstanding the provisions of section 4 of public law 36106, the sum of $3,600,367 is hereby appropriated from the audited excess general fund revenues of fiscal year 2022 to the University of Guam, and then the University of Guam shall not raise tuition during fiscal year 2024. So in closing, I'm hoping my colleagues support this effort and just changing that rainy day fund. So
Thank you, Madam Vice. Senator Tello on the amendment, so we can.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you. And this is on the amendment to the amendment of the amendment. Gosh, it's kind of confusing. I'm sorry, Mr. Chair. You know, I thought a cleaner way would be just to withdraw the first amendment and then just replace it for this particular one, which I stand in full support of. You know, I believe this. This is a viable source, you know, one actually that is going to be realized in the next 3-4 weeks, so hopefully. So I have no objections to it. I'm kind of confused on an amendment, because we always said there's only 2 amendments that are acceptable. So if you can kind of explain how we categorize this.
Okay, number one, it was an amendment of Vice Speaker, and then it was amended by the Speaker, and then we settled that, and then in our closing was just to change the funding source. So everything is still intact except changing rainy day fund to the audited excess general fund. That's all it is, and I talked to the clerks and said, because we already closed that part, the other 2, it's allowable. And if there's no objection, we can just pass this and we'll be done with it. Are there any objection to this amendment? There being Senator Blas. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, the author can yield to the question, or anybody can yield to this question. And I pose this question with the same concern that was provided by good senator from IPAN. The language here, the University of Guam shall not raise the tuition during fiscal year 2024. You know, Mr. Chair, the question here is, do we do this, is this done even before they get the $3.6 million, assuming they're going to get it? Because, you know, right now it says audited excess general fund revenues for fiscal year 2022. We've been waiting for that for the longest time. And, you know, to assume that it's going to be provided before the end of this fiscal year, that, you know, that figure, what happens if it's not provided before the start of, I mean, before the end of this, end of this fiscal year?
So which one were you after?
So my question is, when does this, you know, the university shall not raise the tuition during fiscal year 2024? That's assuming.
I think, Senator Barnes, I think what I think you might have forgotten or didn't remember was that, remember when we did the 22 pay raise?
Yeah.
They cannot raise the increase up until 2025. So it doesn't matter. They get the money or not, it's not going to go up. They can't raise the
Well, that's what I'm saying. So we're putting this.
So it's okay, really, technically, when you.
No, you know, I'm sorry, Mr. Chair. I really would love to support this, but if that's going to be, if we're going to put that onus on them, you know, it's like, do this before I can give you what I promised you. I just have to raise that concern, okay? It's not an objection, but I have to raise that concern.
Thank you. Senator Fisher.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I am now speaking on the amendment as amended, this amendment as amending the amended amendment. I think I got it. I agree entirely with my friend from Barrigada, Senator Frank. I don't know how we slipped into this danger of legislating by threat, which is precisely what we're doing. If we don't get what we want, we are going to do what we can to cripple you. I don't find that to be a particularly productive or positive or democratic way to work in a deliberative institution. This, I don't know what exactly, this AAA, this amendment here, is actually worse, I think, than we had previously. This is coming from the excess general fund revenues of 2022, which have not been audited. We don't know how much is in there. This is a chimera. This is a Trojan horse for the University of Guam. Why don't we just go ahead and give the faculty members salary raises as we originally intended? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator Fisher. While I was working with the clerk, I just wanted to verify who voted for the 22% pay raise that restricted any pay raise, any tuition increase, so I can remind my colleagues, we did put that and restricted them. So when we want to speak about restricting UOG, we did it already.
No, we're talking about poison pills.
Okay. I got your antidote. Anyway, Madam Speaker, did you want to speak, ma'am?
Yes, I would, Mr. Chair. I wasn't going to, except for all this talk about crippling, and we're going to cripple the University of Guam. And I don't think anything could be further from the truth. First of all, maybe they don't understand that the University of Guam is an autonomous entity. It's supposed to be self-funding, but it's not. It's been coming to the legislature for subsidies for many years. And on top of that, we give them money for scholarships because we want scholarships. And for things that we want as a government, for the university to focus on, we try to pay for. And so I can't see how anything in this amendment cripples them by giving them more money. How does that cripple them? The only thing that could be crippling is if you're saying that prohibiting a tuition raise during fiscal year 2024 is something that cripples a university. And I think that's wrong. Because because we have seen in the recent past salary raises at the university and then tuition raises to pay off those salary raises. And what we have been trying to do here in the legislature is to get people to go to the University of Guam. We've tried to subsidize it to make it affordable for them. We've given them all kinds of authority. Crippling is the last thing that anybody should describe as being done to the University of Guam. We have given them very special authorities that we don't give to every other agencies. We've given them even control of their land because they said that would give them the authority to raise money. Well, what happened? We've given them authority for the RCUOG exempt from procurement, hiring practices of the rest of the government of Guam. And that's not enough. And by giving them more money, we're going to cripple them. I just think maybe we need better history lessons or something, because this is not crippling. This is just saying, you want subsidy? All we want is to make sure that the students can get there and we can help them. You want to give salary raises? You could have given salary raises anytime you wanted to. You didn't need us. You only need us for money. You need the people of Guam to pay for your salary raises. What about better management to pay for your salary raises? Anyways, we are willing to fund the University of Guam. I think the legislature is committed to that. We're adding even more to what we've already put in for FY24. And then the list of grants were read. Yeah, those are all grants not subject to any type of legislative involvement except funding. That's another thing that this money could be used for, is to be the matching for additional grants, which is what we've done in other provisions of the bill. We've given them $1 million straight out just for 2 funding sources, 2 grants. When they are supposed to be, that's exactly what they're supposed to be doing, is seeking grants. We've done everything we can to make them have those types of capabilities where they are independent enough to go and seek the grants that will better our community. Not just give faculty raises, but to better our community. And I fully expect them to do that. I haven't spoken, I spoke to the president of the university and other faculty members. They don't seem to have any problem with this amendment because they've promised, they assured us that they are not going to raise tuition. So this is no headache for them, only for some people in here who maybe, I don't know what, do they want tuition raises? I don't understand that. But they are completely capable of getting grant money and whatever other kind of money that they want, but we are also giving them additional money. And we could just give them this money and say this is for tuition, because that's exactly what it's going to end up. But I don't know. I'm not going to say that autonomous agencies, that we need to come here and tell them, oh, when to give raises to their people. I think they're famous for giving raises whenever they want. They have been given that authority. So that's just a no-brainer for me. So I support this amendment. I think the change from the rainy day fund to the audited excess general fund revenue from fiscal year 2022 is a good change. And I support that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And just for a matter of a record, I did a little check with the clerks. When we did the 22 pay raise, there was no objection, and we did restrict University of Guam from raising the tuition up to 2025. Moving along.
One more
Senator
point of
Duenas.
information, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
We're also funding every capital improvement project that they've had. They have not used their independence to fund it. We funded it. We're funding the
Yes.
debt service on the two new buildings, the engineering building and
Yes.
the student center. So
Yes.
I don't know what the problem is here.
Yeah, yes, ma'am. Senator Duenas, you wanted to speak to the amendment before? I don't think we have any objection, or unless there is one.
Yeah, Ms. Chuzmasi, Mr. Chairman, and I just providing some information, 2 points really. I have a feeling this morning may be a run on the 22 fiscal year audited appropriations, but I don't have a problem with that because I actually have an amendment for another amendment proposed. And the reason why is it will be a viable funding source based on what we've learned from Steve and OFB and others, that it's going to be about choosing your priorities. Now, I'm not going to object to this amendment, but what I'm saying, Mr. Chairman, and it's going to be a feature of just what I believe fundamentally. When we start to add fixed costs, this will be a fixed cost at this point. You know, we did not debate this in the budget. We did not debate it in terms of what request was brought forward. But it's been mentioned a number of different times on the floor, and I do agree with it, that things that are within the control of any entity, you know, should be exercised as much as possible within that entity. They're not prohibited by this legislature from taking those actions. But keeping in mind that as we go forward, should this amendment pass, should the funding be realized, should that be a priority in terms of allotment schedules, this will now be a fixed cost for the University of Guam. It will be in consideration of all future budgets going forward. So I think it's important that as we enumerate what this body has done for education as a whole, to include our University of Guam, which I don't think there's a person in this hall that doesn't support. You know, these will be the going forward conversations of an overall budget and a budget request that will now assume this fixed cost. If everything comes to fruition within this fiscal year, we'll be talking about this for the next fiscal year appropriation within this August body. So I just wanted to put that observation out there. And I don't think competition for audited financials of 2022 is a bad thing. As a matter of fact, I think there are substantive programs that were funded in the last fiscal year that I don't see any procurement for, and they're in the millions of dollars. So let the competition begin. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Excuse me. Let me go back to gavel. Are there anyone like to speak, or Senator Brown?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I just want to note, you know, even though this is being sold to us as, you know, preventing the increase of tuition, because we don't manage the University of Guam and how they manage all their funds and how they prioritize how they spend the money that they get. But we're essentially looking at $3.6 million in exchange for one fiscal year of not raising tuition. But, you know, as my good colleague here from Tamuning just mentioned, I mean, we're looking at long-term obligation of the government. So for 1 year, in exchange for 1 year here of not raising tuition, we're going to add another $3.6 million that we're going to fund to the University of Guam to pay these pay raises. And I don't argue the importance of it. I think it's long due to the teaching faculty at UOG. But again, the bigger picture financially of what we're doing is continuing to obligate the taxpayers of Guam to continued pay raises. That's the reality, colleagues. Let's not put it in any other package. We are continuing to increase the cost of government, government-wide. And I have to ask you, as I'm sure our taxpayers have to ask themselves, what is better? What service is better? And I think it's unfortunate because these incredible increases that are happening government-wide, and they're not happening at a few percentage points here or a few percentage points there, they're happening at 22+%. Of course, the administrators of the university prioritized their pay raises and making sure they got taken care of. And now they present to us, oh, the UOG faculty now needs to get a raise. And I don't argue the need for that because it's been longstanding. But colleagues, this is only for a single year. There's nothing to prohibit them next year when we have and are committing the taxpayers of Guam, unless we just don't fund it next year. We're committing them to continue to pay this indefinitely for one single fiscal year with the argument and the rationale that, oh, we're not going to raise tuition on the students. I'm not going to be surprised if after next year the tuitions get raised, or the year after that it gets raised with the continued increased costs. Because how are you going to continue to fund this? All we're doing is multiplying and guaranteeing moving forward every fiscal year that the cost of government is going to continue to increase. And we have no involvement in how decisions get made, as we shouldn't. You know, they should be able to have their autonomy, but they don't have their fiscal autonomy. They make their decisions and they come to us, you know, often with claims of how their accreditation is going to be jeopardized if they don't get this amount and they don't get that amount. That's the same old story. I've heard it for years. And like I said, I probably spent more time at UOG than anyone else here. So it's not that I don't have a love for the university or the work that they do, but I'm just concerned at how we continue to try to rationalize to the people, rationalize to the taxpayers that, oh, we're keeping tuition down. They could take this money out of any other operation at the university and place it towards these salaries. That's where management comes in. That's where leadership comes in. It's not, oh, I can't operate unless you give me more money. That's all we hear time and time again. And I know, colleagues, because unlike most of you, there are the few of us that attend these hearings regularly with the budget chairman, and that's the same thing we hear. They can't function. If you don't give me 20 million more, I can't function. They don't talk about all the other millions they've been appropriated. They can't manage. They can't do this. They can't do that. And that's all the people get back in return, with the expectation that the government of Guam is going to continue to get bigger and more expensive and less efficient. So I just hate to see this being sold to our people, that we're saving our students from tuition raises in exchange for funding pay raises, be it the university or anywhere else. I just have reservation about that. I think we're selling the people of Guam not a very good deal here, that they're going to end up being stuck indefinitely of these additional costs that we are adding on their backs. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I have no support of this amendment.
Thank you. Does anyone else like to speak? Otherwise, I'm going to ask if there's any Senator Barnett.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Happy Monday. Viva Lunes to my colleagues this morning. I just wanted to use my time to, I know you had mentioned it earlier, but there was some concern from the back right about crippling the University of Guam, and I just wanted to read into the record the amendment that I had proffered back when we were discussing Bill number 24. And just to read to the end of it, as a condition of receiving this appropriation, the University of Guam shall not raise tuition for any semester prior to September 30, 2025. And again, sir, this amendment received no objection at the time that I proffered it. So I'm just offering that for clarification, sir, because it seems to be we might be misremembering things in the back. But again, I fully support the amendment, sir. It's my understanding that if in the event they do use this for faculty raises, they have the freedom to do with the money what they will. But just on the subject of the raises, we are talking about faculty that have not received a meaningful increase for at least what I read of the Board of Regents report for 30 years, sir. And if not now, then when? So, of course, I'd rather see the money go to student services. But again, the University of Guam has the ability to do with it what they will, sir. And so that's all. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. I don't see any hands. So are there any objection to this amendment? There is an objection. Okay, I need to see a show of hand in support of this amendment. Please raise your hand, left or right. Amendment passes. That being stated, okay, we'll now move to the next one. The next one is now...
Mr. Chair.
Okay, now that passed the amendment. Now we're back to the amendment as amended. And on that motion, are there any objection? There's one objection. Please, all in favor, please raise your hand. Motion passes. Now we have closed the issue with the University of Guam. Okay, we will now go to, the next amendment is first.
Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, over here.
Senator Burris?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to reconsider the actions of the body, notwithstanding the rules.
What was your request you're asking for?
To reconsider the actions of the body on my previous amendments.
Oh, okay, you're asking the body to
Notwithstanding.
reconsider the motion of the body when they...
Mr. Chair, aren't we are already going through these amendments first, before anything is?
Yes,
Yeah,
and she's asking us
notwithstanding.
to, notwithstanding, if we can reconsider the motion the body made on her amendment that failed.
I
Right.
just, we're changing the rules right now, Mr. Chair. Your rule says that we'll go through these amendments first, but
There's a point of order, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
On the amendment, the motion is in order for a reconsideration because it's still within the same chapter, and there was an amendment that failed. So I ask that the chair
And
do an order
that's,
to that.
and that's the direction I'm going. There's a motion to reconsider. We're still in the same chapter as
which amendment is this, Mr. Chair? I'm sorry.
and that's what I was going to ask her to speak on it, so that we can go to the motion to reconsider. Okay, Senator Burris, if you can speak on what is the amendment that we're going to reconsider.
So this is the supplemental tobacco and nicotine control and prevention.
This was discussed on the 22nd of this month. It was earlier when we first started discussing this chapter. Are there any objection to the reconsideration of a motion to reconsider? There is an objection. All in favor of the reconsideration of this amendment? Please raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4. Motion passes to reconsider. Senator Paris.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Point of the inquiry, can I please find out which amendment this is, where it's at? Because we have filed this, inactive, so if
Okay,
you can give us a minute so we can find the amendment?
Let's take a couple minutes and let's get this amendment back out. Okay, thank you. Committee of the Whole is called back to order. My colleagues, you should all have a copy of the bill, the amendment. Are there any objections to the amendment? Yeah. Okay. I see no objection. Motion passes. That amendment passes. Senator Parrish, you don't need to do a closing. Okay? It passed. There was no objection. I beg your pardon? Can you please go to your, so I can hear you on the mic, and then I can go back from what already passed, but
Mr. Chair,
yes.
if I may, just a point of information, not a point of inquiry. What you were asking for was the motion to reconsider, and there was an objection, and then that motion passed, right? So now we were talking about what, the amendment itself, or amended as amended, or what's the situation?
No, okay. The amendment to be reconsidered or for vote.
Right.
Well, you cannot amend the amendment because we only moved to reconsider the amendment, right? There was no objection. We put it back on the table. Now we move to vote on it because you cannot amend it. Okay? We have an understanding that. And Senator Blas says yes, correct. Senator Canata. It's as is. It's basically to reconsider, re-vote on it. That's all it comes down to.
Okay, and this amendment, Mr. Chair, if I may, does utilize, once again, this is the general fund revenues of fiscal year FY2023 for the purpose excess revenue. So this is
That's
using
correct.
excess revenue.
Of 23, if I'm correct.
And this person cannot amend it?
No,
Okay,
it's just we're just going back, basically a re-vote on it, okay?
okay.
Okay? Are there any objection to that? We have one objection. All in favor of the amendment? Okay? We're just asking, it's a re-vote. Just trying to get this either pass or fail. If we can see that hands raised in support of the amendment. Motion passed, the amendment passes, okay? Now we're going to go back in order with what is next. The next one in line now is, stand by, and let me get, Senator Brown's amendment now. We're back to Senator Brown. Now we're in order. Senator Brown, it's your amendment. Yes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. My original amendment, which I'm going to amend and probably going to have to further amend as a result of the most recent amendment that was put forth, is essentially to take $300,000 that's being added to the legislative budget that does not exist now. And originally I was going to send it as the rainy day fund in my amendment, and then I was going to send it to I had a further amendment here that I was going to send it to the literacy and also to the amendment that the Senator Sabina just proposed, which just passed, so I might have to change the source of it. But I think the fundamental thing that I want to relay, colleagues, is the legislature in this budget has chosen, and I don't know, I'm going to ask OFB because I didn't realize I could just ask for additional money and it was going to miraculously appear. But I wanted to inquire, who made the request of an additional $20,000 per senator in their budget? Because I know I didn't make it. I surveyed my colleagues on the Republican side of the aisle, and they all said they didn't ask for an additional $20,000 increase. So, I mean, for the record, who here asked for $20,000 more to be added to their budget?
Last year, Senator Brown, the $20,000 was given, and I advised my colleagues, everyone here, that I'm gonna put it back on again, and nobody objected to it. If you want, you can take it off. I mean, I have no problem with that one.
Well, you know, Mr. Chairman, I also objected to the budget last year. This is
That's correct.
This is not new.
It's nothing new.
One thing, you may agree with me or not, but I'm fairly consistent with regards to key issues here, and certainly with regards to fiscal responsibility and setting examples. This is nothing new. But do we know then, are you the one who moved, Mr. Chairman, an additional $20,000 to the legislative budget?
Senator Brown, are we talking about your amendment, or we're talking
Yes.
about the 20,000?
Because I'm trying to gather the source of why our budget has been so substantially increased at a time when we know, we put so many, at least I did not, but members of this body have put long-term obligations, substantial long-term obligations on the backs of our people. And we know those are short-term revenue sources that are depleting. And I don't know how we as a body are setting an example for fiscal responsibility if on top of everything else, we're adding an additional close to $1 million of our budget. Now, we were given the justification, we need to buy new microphones for the public hearing room, and we need to replace the air conditioning system here at the Guam Legislature. So, I think the request to simply take this $300,000 that would have funded an additional $20,000 to each senator, personal budget staff, should be put to something more critically needed in our government. But I do want to ask, if I can ask your OFB office, how much does each majority senator receive in their annual budget? So the public can be aware of how much we all receive in our annual budgets.
I don't have the breakdown with me, Senator, but you give me a moment, I can get it for you.
I would appreciate it. I think we'd all like to know. I don't know how much the majority gets. I'd like to know how much they get. I think the public would like to know.
I can get back
And then
to you.
on top of that, please also check how much our minority budget. What's our annual minority budget?
I can get that information for you,
Thank you.
Senator.
We have a quick recess so he can get that information. Committee of the Whole is called back to order. Senator Brown, you asked a question that is applicable only to Chapter 6, the legislature's budget. They have the information, but it doesn't apply to your amendment.
No, I understand. I just want for our
Information
information and the public's information what our budgets are now, what our existing budgets are.
So why don't we just get back to your amendment then? Stick to your amendment, because, okay, just your amendment,
Yes.
okay?
I just want does OFB have the information?
And to provide it, he has the information, but it's not open for discussion because it should have been on Chapter 6, ma'am. I just want to make sure that's clear.
I understand. I'm not going to deliberate, but I think the information is important because we're adding an additional
Okay, you can
20
get,
plus
you can get the
thousand,
information.
and you did tell me
Yes.
I couldn't address it on that chapter, and I could do it in miscellaneous. That's why I'm doing it now, if you recall.
No, it was your amendment, we were addressing it?
Yes, but when we did
Okay.
the legislative budget, you passed over it, and you told me the time had lapsed, and I could not address it,
Yeah,
but
no.
I could do it in miscellaneous, so
Okay,
that's why
here
I'm
we
doing
go.
it now, Mr. Chair, in all fairness,
All right, okay. Steve?
Yes, thank you. The majority of the FY23 legislative budget is as follows. On the, for the minority, which is nine members, the total amount for the speaker is about roughly 374,000.
Are we doing majority? Majority.
Yes, the majority.
Okay.
The majority for the speaker's office is about 374,000.
How much was it? $374,000?
374,000, yes. I'll just give you rough numbers, okay?
Sorry, point of information. What are we reading? What is this information?
This is the Senator Brown's question to me was, can I provide a breakdown for the FY23 budget for the legislature by
FY23 budget by the
Yeah.
legislature. That's a,
majority and minority
okay.
allocations?
But what is that document? Because I've never seen, is it a resolution or something?
No, this is information I just got from Central.
Okay, all right.
Okay, again, for the majority, the speaker is roughly about 374,000. For each of the majority senators, which includes also the committees, is about 242,000 a year. If you add that up, it amounts up to 3.3 million. For the
Okay,
minority,
that was 242,000?
242,000, yes,
Okay.
roughly. In total, that's about 3.3 million for the majority. For the minority, which comprises of 6 senators, the minority, each senator gets 144,000 per annum, a total of 1.7 million. The balance of that, which is roughly about 3.7 million, is for operations.
And that goes to Central, and then also OFB has a separate budget.
Yes, ma'am.
I appreciate the information. Again, Mr. Chair, in relaying this, this is our existing budget that added on an additional 20,000 last fiscal year. And then on top of that, this current budget is proposing an additional $20,000 per each senatorial office, which would increase these existing figures by another 300 plus thousand. I just feel, Mr. Chairman, with all the other critical needs in the government, and there are, I think as leaders, we need to set the example. I mean, I've seen the spending spree in the last 3 years that I've been back here, and I just don't think we're setting that pace. I don't think we're being responsible in this budget, knowing full well there's some critical operations in this government that we are not funding, that are going to be knocking on our door relatively soon. And I think it's hard to speak about being, responsible financial leaders when we ourselves are rushing to make sure we get our piece of the pie before anybody else does, especially when there are critical operations in this government that need the support. I'm going to further amend my amendment, Mr. Speaker. I had previously one to give to some of these cessation programs, but since Senator Sabina's amendment that she pulled back has passed, I put another substitute amendment, if I can speak at it at this time, to provide this $300,000 to what I think is a critical need in this government. I think it's hard to argue. I mean, I had read yesterday that, I don't know if they found the ambulance, but I'd read that an ambulance had been stolen. When they were responding to pick up an individual up the hill from where I live, came out and the ambulance was gone. Someone had stolen it. So we're seeing continued crime on our island, even though I don't know how you hide an ambulance, but who knows? People do really strange things.
Senator Brown, I'm just trying to figure out which amendment you're talking about, because I know you did an amendment to the amendment.
Yes, I want to change the original amendment, if I can substitute it, Mr. Chair, with the amendment that was passed out. Instead of appropriating originally the rainy day fund, then they pulled the other amendment that I had for the cessation program, since Senator Sabina already passed her amendment. I want to address the amendment that would give the funding to the Guam Police Department, to give the Guam Police Department an additional $300,000 so that they can allocate it to other critical needs, including hopefully hiring additional police officers to get out there in the community. So that is my amendment that I'm proposing, Mr. Chair.
Okay, it won't need to be substituted because you're reading it.
Okay.
We'll just dispose of the initial.
Okay.
And we'll work with the one you have that's for GPD.
Yes.
Okay.
To put the money to the Guam Police Department.
All right. Does anyone like to speak to that amendment? Senator Blas and anyone else? So I know, again, Senator Fisher, and then we'll just go down the line. Okay. Senator Blas.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I stand in support of this amendment. And I have to agree with the author in the reasoning for this, in that, I think we've gone over the last 3 weeks of being able to, unfortunately, with the budget as large as we're going to consider, in many cases, we're still trying to squeeze a penny, a nickel out of 2 pennies that we have before us. And, there are a lot of compelling reasons as to why the arguments with regard to where the monies should go, and in some cases I didn't agree with monies that we were providing for funding purposes that were monies that haven't been realized, although we anticipated. This is here funding that we know we were going to be able to get. And this is funding that, as much as we can appreciate being able to get it, the fact of the matter is, and the reality is that there are still some very pressing needs that we have here in this particular case with the Guam Police Department. And I had a conversation with the Chief of Police, very short one last week, and he was concerned of how he was going to continue to maintain operations based on, being able to provide, or it's not that he's mandated to provide it. He's given the opportunity, the option to consider to provide it, $100,000 to Crime Stoppers. And in his discussions, he goes, "Sir, I need that money for my operations. I need that money for, for the gas for the vehicles and for overtime and whatnot." And when you're looking at the $300,000 and giving them the authority to be able to use it where they can, one of the areas they can, $300,000 can basically provide you 5 more police officers, at least for the next fiscal year, or to fund overtime money. To pay overtime on an area that's very critically needed. And maybe in good times, in better times, in not the extreme and the dire times that we are right now, that I would say okay. But I can't argue that we should watch our spending. We should be very careful. That I'm not as confident in being able to appropriate monies from areas that I haven't seen the money yet. But here gives us that opportunity to be able to, for lack of a better term, put our money where our mouth is. If we want to be able to really provide the assistance where it's necessary, if we're asking other places to take the cuts and take the hits, I think we have to lead by example here. And so I stand in support of the amendment. I stand in support of where we see the money is intended to be, to go to. But unlike, other than the Guam Police Department, we have other issues too that we've got to contend with. Okay? We've got a failing hospital. We've got a hospital that's $30 million in debt. Not to say also that other than the debt, the repairs that is necessary, that this money could go to. We had an education, we had schools. We complain that, that they're not safe. We got the roadways that we want to be able to repair. We got recreational facilities that in need of repair. All these things that we want to be able to do, and we just don't have enough of the funding. It's kind of funny. And as we say this, we're struggling with being able to do this. Just going to remind everybody, there's still over $200 million in another account that we can't touch. It's a sad situation, but it's true. So I stand in support, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much for the opportunity. My time's up.
Thank you, Senator Law. Senator Fisher, you wanted to speak to this amendment?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I support the amendment as well. For people who weren't watching us on the television last week, they might be a little bit curious about this $300,000 and how that came walking on the floor. The addition and the appearance of the $300,000, I can assure you, was as much a surprise to the Republican caucus as to the taxpayers. One of my colleagues evidently surveyed the caucus and found out that no Republican requested the $300,000. Therefore, it was the Democrats in this House who requested this mystery $300,000. Now, I don't know what it was they wanted to use it for. I suppose they need new big TVs and sofas for their office. I don't think that's necessarily appropriate. And I also wondered, there was a discussion last week as well about whether or not we were going to give overtime payments to the people who work here, and that was roundly rejected by the Democrats. And I thought to myself, well, how can this be? Are they not the populist party? Are they not the party of the grassroots? Well, it turns out they're not. What they're doing is feathering their own nest. That's what happened. It's a tragedy that they did that. So I support this amendment. Instead of just making ourselves here in this House fatter, why don't we give it to the people? They're the ones who produce the money. Let's give it back to the taxpayers, and one of the ways to do that is through Senator Brown's amendment, yes, which will give an additional $300,000 to the Guam Police Department to keep us all safe. So rather than feathering our own nests and making ourselves happy and getting new sofas and big TVs, let's help the people of Guam by dedicating this money to the Guam Police Department. And as I close, sir, it may behoove us to put some money aside for the Attorney General's office because I've just learned that their phones were shut off for non-payment. So the legislature, which is that's a problem. So we may want to see if we can't dig up 20 grand somewhere to help Mr. Moylan get his phones turned back on. So let's consider that as we go forward. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak on this, sir.
Senator Fisher, a real short comment from me on reference to the Attorney General's office. If they cut their phone off, it's because they're not managing their money. That's not on us. They got money, they got lapses, so let's move on that one.
Okay, I think that's
Anyone else like to speak?
That's a fair observation, sir.
Thank you. Senator Dueñas?
Mr. Chairman, just a very pithy comment here in support of the amendment. As the author of Bucks for Buses in the 31st Guam Legislature, I just wanted to name this one Pati Pari Policeman. So I support the amendment, and I'm glad we're going to pati out $300,000 for the policeman.
Thank you. Anyone else would like to speak to the amendment? Senator Nicholas.
You know, I applaud the author for doing this. But didn't we fund GPD already?
Yes, we did, Senator
And, you
Snickers.
know, I didn't personally ask for $20,000, but, you know, I think everybody could use it here in the legislature. We've been so gracious funding everybody else, you know. I could use $20,000. I'm pretty sure my colleagues could use $20,000. This is an investment in our own office and in our own branch of government. I think we've been very good dealing with everybody else's issues, and we tend to neglect, you know, our side of the house. And we are equally tasked to run this government just like everybody else. And I think it's very noble to want to give to GPD, but we did fund them. And I think it's disingenuous to not want this money and not utilize it here the best we could. You give me $20,000, that would be an investment in my office and how best I can carry out the work of the people. And I'm pretty sure a lot of our senators here can do the same, even the author. And I don't want to speak for her, but like I said in the beginning, I didn't ask for this $20,000, but I think it's an investment in this house. So for all the good work that comes out of here. So you know, it might not get me reelected, but I'm being real. So there you go. I can't support this amendment, although I really respect the author. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Snickers. Anyone else like to speak to the amendment? There being none, Senator, okay. We'll start with the speaker.
You're not going to say any?
We'll start with the speaker on the amendment and then followed by Senator Guåhan. Thank you.
Oh, he can go first.
Senator Guåhan, if you can, just,
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I can understand the previous speaker, and yeah, who wouldn't need extra money, right? I understand that, but you know, the author of this amendment, of course, in regards to priorities, and let me just say that, you know, Friday, I had the opportunity to tour Guam Memorial Hospital, and the situation out there is pretty dire. You know, in 2019, when the Army Corps talked about their panel being down in the chiller's yet to be fixed at this point. You walk in GMH, it's really musty. You can smell pretty much the mold that's growing. Memo just came out shortly after I visited there, in about maybe about 15 minutes after I was walking around and looking at what was happening there and talking to some of the staff. About 15 minutes later, a memo had come out. And basically the memo had come out and said, due to the compromised GMH main chiller system, they've been working closely with not only Homeland Security and the Office of Civil Defense, the Port Authority, to be able to bring a chiller container with AC to store critical pharmaceuticals. They had since purchased 100 fans to install in key areas of the hospital, right? And they will bring in more as needed. They also had picked up 50 split units and to be installed in the clinical areas, and more would be brought in. They anticipate more to be brought in as well. 10 portable ACs, 8,000 BTUs for the pharmacy, lab, and labor and delivery. Installation to begin as soon as possible.
Senator Guåhan, not to cut you off, but we're talking about GPD.
No, I
understand
know,
what the issue is, GMH.
I'm trying to make a point in regards to our priorities, Mr. Chairman.
But GPD is the priority.
Yes, GPD is priority in this, and yeah. But what I'm trying to say is the fiscal responsibility in regards to our house, and yeah, who would not need money? I would love to have more money. We all do. But when we look at the priorities, we look at the situation in the hospital and prioritizing where we should put these monies, and there are some doctors who are calling for the evacuation of the hospital. They haven't started the mitigation of the mold mitigation at this point. There's some doctors who are calling for evacuation. Well, what's going to happen? Where are the patients going to go if that happens? We're going to put up the blue tents? And that's what I'm saying, Mr. Speaker. So I support the amendment in regards to priorities, and wish I could, at this point, I wish I could identify a funding source at this point, because GMH needs between $8 to $10 million to mitigate the situation at this point. It'll get them a long ways to be able to mitigate their situation in regards to the mold and the chillers that they have at this point. The chillers, again, that was identified by the Army Corps of Engineers back in 2019 has yet to be addressed. There's no money. This is on top of the $30 million that the hospital administrator had spoken to us a week and a half ago regarding non-paying vendors. I also saw that the Pink Ladies
GPD
store has been their construction is shut down because the vendor the contractor walked away for non-payment. And so that's what I'm saying. So I support the amendment. And my point is, yes, I'm not talking about GPD, but I'm talking about priorities within this government and where we should put our monies. And again, I support Senator Brown's amendment. I'm just talking about the shortfalls in this government because, again, it's coming to roost in regards to the government's needs in putting monies to the critical areas of this government. But again, I stand in support of this amendment by Senator Brown. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Long. Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I know it's a mystery where the request for $20,000 additional for each office came from. It certainly did not come from me. I want to say that on the record. And I'm actually glad that's being questioned because I agree. If we are going to cut $100,000 from very small agencies so that we can fund a shower over at Matapang Beach, then by all means, we should have our priorities straight. If we need to fund an aircon here that is broken in a place that we are going to occupy for only 2 years, we should be good stewards of this building, and we should take care of those types of expenses. I agree with those. So for me, it comes down to the issue of what is it going to be used for? That is something that the Committee on Rules should lay out very clearly. It should be approved by Committee on Rules if we're going to depart from our current budgets or appropriations. I was curious about the list that was read out by the Committee on Appropriations, because that's the first time I've ever heard of that. All the different needs that the legislature has or that they want to fund with this additional money. But anyways, as to this amendment before us, if it's just to take out $20,000 additional to each office, put it towards GPD, I'm all for that. I agree, GPD is a priority, the hospital's a priority, we have many, many priorities. I have no objection to this amendment. My only question to OFB would be, this amendment actually looks like it's giving an additional, I think the intent was to cut the current appropriation to the legislature that's contained in an earlier section of the bill, but all it really does is seems to add an additional $8 million some appropriation to from the general fund to the legislature. So I think that has to be fixed by legal. We're not adding an additional $8 million. We want to amend an earlier section of this bill, but we've passed that section, and I think they want to cut down the amount that was previously made. And if that's the case, then I don't think it's written exactly correct, but hopefully the bottom line says legal and the clerks to make technical corrections. So that's all. I just want to make sure I'm supporting this, not to give an additional $8 million to the legislature, but to amend the earlier appropriation in the bill to the legislature so that an additional $300,000 can go to the Guam Police Department. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Senator Barnett.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, as the Committee on Rules Chair, I just also would like to state on the record that I did not ask for a increase of $20,000 to my office budget. It was included in the budget request that I reviewed for submission to the Office of Finance and Budget, and my question was, would it be sustainable? And the answer I received was yes. And even with that being said, I support the amendment. I mean, how could we not support any effort to further fund the Guam Police Department? Even though in conversation with Chief Steve Ignacio, he had told me that GPD was, in his words, all good. But when we attempted to pass an amendment that would have funded the Guam Crime Stoppers, I had messaged the chief, who is going through a lot personally, and he was gracious enough to respond that $100,000 would go a long way for the Guam Police Department relative to funding overtime and gas for vehicles. And so I'm very grateful that we're able to get that amended language in there that offers that money at the discretion of the chief of police. Outside of the $300,000 and the $20,000 per office increase, which obviously is very arguable, I would argue that to echo the sentiments of Senator San Nicolas, could we use an additional $20,000 to our offices? Of course we could. But the issue here is so could a lot of other agencies. And in this case, the Guam Police Department, I think if we're going to talk about who needs it more, I'm not going to argue that the senators, and I don't think anybody in this body was planning to use any of that money to buy love seats or jacuzzis or big screen TVs or whatever the picture that some of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle want to paint. And we do have needs here in the legislature. We're trying to get a mold assessment in for this historic building. You guys know we've had issues with the air conditioner. The $400,000 that we're requesting in the budget, a large chunk of that would go towards replacing what we're going to spend on fixing the chiller with a capital district fund. And then we're anticipating that the repairs to the chillers may exceed that amount. So there is a little bit of a cushion there. So this idea that we're living the life of luxury here in the legislature, I don't agree with. But I do agree, of course, as the public safety chair, I do agree in supporting the Guam Police Department, Mr. Chair. So I do support this amendment, but again, I don't support this. And, you know, I've been on the other side. I've been in the media, and sure, I've lodged my accusations, but being in this body and just speaking for my colleagues, it's a very hard-working body. Very hard-working, sir. And so, yeah, I take offense to the idea that if we had received this money, at least I'm going to speak for myself, no intention at all of buying large screen TVs or love seats, couches. What else was said? Put a jacuzzi in the conference room, sir. I'm offended by those types of characterizations, sir. But again, I support the amendment. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right. Anyone else want to speak? Otherwise, do you need to close? Okay.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Certainly thank you as well to my colleagues for their views on this issue. I just think it comes down to setting responsibilities and setting priorities, Mr. Chairman. We're going to find shortly that a lot of things that were appropriate in this budget, especially sources outside of the actual general fund revenue, probably are not going to be funded. Even though we want it to appear that by providing these alternative funding sources that somehow, you know, we're going to advocate and we're going to see these things funded. I'm still waiting for the audit. I think we're all still waiting for the audit to actually see what tangible cash. And I think reality is telling us when $22 million in vendor payments at GMH are not getting paid, that tells me cash is short. Actual cash. We can write whatever figures we want on paper, but what's actually there and what's getting covered, a lot of things are not getting paid for. Knowing that, if we are going to call ourselves leaders, we're not supposed to be comfortable in these chairs, Mr. Chairman. That's not our job for being here. We tell the people when we run for office, we're out here to advocate for their concerns and their interests, not to make our lives comfortable. That's not why we're here. At least that's not why I'm here. I mean, my TV in my office, I bought and paid for myself. So, you know. I just think we need to lead by example. And when we're busy feathering our own nest so we can be a little more comfortable, so we can hire more staff or increase their salaries beyond our existing budget, so our lives can be more comfortable, that's not our priority, should not be our priority. Because colleagues, election's next year. So, you know, if you want to go out and tell the people you're there for them, how you vote on this is going to be very telling, because this is $20,000 we didn't have. And now we're prioritizing adding money onto our own budgets to make our lives, however you're going to use it, because I'm not going to use it. I'm not going to use this $20,000. My staff sacrifices, they live very simple. And thank God for them. I appreciate them because they don't spend a lot of money, even in supplies. They're very frugal. And I think we all should be. Because, colleagues, it's coming. I don't know if you see the train, but it's coming down the tracks. And a lot of things in the next 12 months are going to come to roost. As my colleague said, yes, the chickens are going to come home to roost. And all of a sudden, you will not have the cash available to fix or address these critical needs out there. Just the hospital. The list is growing, and these are tangible things that affect the health and welfare and safety of our people. We talk about how education is so important, educating our goodness. The list of what's needed to be done, even the federal money is not going to be enough to address that. You know, government has an insatiable appetite for money. And many of my colleagues here have continued to increase the burden of our people. Goodness, what, 60, 70 million since we started just this January. What is it, August? In 8 months, we've managed to increase the burdens on their backs. And then on top of that, other critical services are not being paid for. So yes, if we want to lead, we should be sacrificing. We should not be adding to our budget. Because when the time comes, and it's coming, when you're going to have to cut other services in this government, it's a little hard to do that when you yourself are sitting pretty. Because I'll be there to remind our people next year, how you vote on this, you can vote on all kinds of things. How you vote on this particular amendment is going to be very telling of your character, where your priorities are. Because really the effectiveness of your office comes from you, not the staff that writes your speeches or does your research. It comes from you. And if our priority at this time, knowing where we're heading, now that the party's over for all the federal money, is to increase our budget, I'm not arguing the need if they need to do a new chiller. I'm sick. I'm sick every time I'm in this place for an extended period of time, and we've been here for weeks. I don't know about other members. I know other colleagues have also gotten sick. Other staff members have. Physically being in this building. What more, the hospital? So colleagues, this is very telling. I'm gonna know a little more about each of you on how you vote. That's your choice. You go back to the people of Guam and account for your own actions. But when the time comes, when we're busy taking off the fiesta table to feed ourselves while our people out there are suffering, while they're not getting the critical needs that they need, then you talk about your quality of leadership and the example you're setting for them. With that, Mr. Chair, I know I'm running out of time, but I do is up. Just want to add one word to the amendment. I know that the speaker had requested technical amendments, but I just want to put the sum of an additional $300,000 so that they know that this is in addition to the existing budget that was provided in a previous chapter for the Guam Police Department. If you have no objections, or the body has no objections, Mr. Chair.
Are there any objections to that amendment to reflect the additional $300,000 per GPD? No, there are no objections, so we just accept it. It's been written already. Are there any, Senator Paris? She already closed, so.
Yeah, can I request a moment recess?
No, let's wrap this amendment up, ma'am. So it's.
Yeah, it's regarding this amendment.
It's regarding the amendment that she's proffering?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. We'll do a quick recess then.
Thanks.
We're gonna go to the amendment, okay, as it was added,
Can, Mr. Chair,
Madam Speaker.
point of order. Can we please get some kind of assurance as to whether we're voting for an additional appropriation to the legislature, or we're amending an earlier appropriation to the legislature?
We're only amending the appropriation to the legislature by 300,000. That's what this amendment is for. Okay, there is an objection. All in favor, please raise your hand. Oh, no, stand by. Put your hand down one more time. Okay, I need a gavel on the amendment as amended. Are there any objections? There being none. Now we're going to vote on the amendment as amended. Okay, all in favor, please raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, motion passes. Thank you. Now we'll proceed to, it's 11:30, colleagues. Why don't we do an hour and a half break? Come back at 1 o'clock. Or correction. We'll come back at 2 o'clock. Thank you.